Good morning, students. Yesterday, we had been looking at the non cooperation movement and the reason why it was withdrawn, and also the reasons why it did not become nationwide, right from rural to urban. Setup, why it did not kind of succeed in all the areas. It succeeded in some areas, failed in the others. We looked into that, and we also looked into that the British to look into all this constitutional framework under which India was under, and the reason why it had been causing a lot of um, apprehension and consternation against the British. There was a lot of disquiet against the British in the Indian opinion, and the British wanted to address this issue. At least that's what they said, and that is why they had appointed the Simon Commission to look into how best this thing could be taken care of. But the biggest problem with this was, as I told you yesterday, was that there was not a single member in this commission who was an Indian. So it is very unlikely, and it was almost like a tick mark activity that you had already made up your mind, all British sitting together, making up what needs to be written in the commission, the recommendations, and Indians nowhere to be seen. So it was a huge disappointment for Indians, because the setting up of this commission had also come after a great deal of struggle. Now, but students, you would always get questions, something or the other related to Simon Commission, but always remember why Simon Commission was formed. Okay, you must read a bit of details on the formation of Simon Commission and why it was a failure. Okay, now students, coming to and of course Indians said, Simon, go back. But this is a very important sentence here. All parties, that is page number 38, the last paragraph, all parties including the Congress and the Muslim League participated in the demonstrations against Simon Commission. That is, in an effort to win them over, the Viceroy, Lord Irwin, announced in October 1929 a vague offer of dominion status for India in an unspecified future and a roundtable conference to discuss a future constitution. This did not satisfy the Congress leaders. So, students, you have to understand that even now, as late as in 1929, that is from for almost 160 years, when the British had already been the masters of India, they were not at all interested in granting any kind of independence to India and ensuring that the Indians become the master of their own land. No, they were still now talking about dominion status. Now, what dominion status is? Dominion status essentially gives you certain powers, certain ministries, certain responsibilities that you would handle as Indians and be very happy about it. But the major power, the major portfolios, things like finance, foreign, uh, army, home affairs, all this would be in the hands of, and remain in the hands of British. So it is almost like it's all cosmetic surgery. Okay, so nothing much was to come out of it, and that is why. But this is what maximum the British were willing to grant, and that is why it was not going to be popular at all. So the radicals within the Congress, led by Pandit Nehru and Subhash Chandra Bose, became more assertive. The liberals and moderates, who were proposing a constitutional system within the framework of British dominion, gradually lost their influence. And in December 1929, under the presidency of Pandit Nehru, the Lahore Congress formalized the demand for Purna Swaraj, or full independence for India, and it was declared that 26th January 1930 would be celebrated as the Independence Day, when people were to take pledge to struggle to complete independence. Students, you have to the there's so many things in these few sentences. The radicals within the Congress, led by Pandit Nehru and Subhash Chandra Bose, became more assertive. Now they wanted complete independence. They were just not willing to settle for anything less than that, because they felt that the dominion status, that is, half we would handle and half you would handle, and but you would remain the masters. You would still have the governor general. Uh, all this was not working. Or you would have the viceroy, and all the major decisions would be taken by you. That was not working. Okay, and that is why some leaders in Congress party were not at all looking for that option. But then at the same time, as it very clearly says in this paragraph, there were a lot of Congress leaders who were pretty happy about the situation, and historically they had been very happy about the situation, that yes, what is wrong, or what is the harm if if the Indians get an opportunity to work with the British, and handle certain important assignments, handle certain important portfolios. So they were of the opinion that British could basically stay here forever if the Indians are thrown some breadcrumbs. The Gora Sahib could rule India as long as the Gora Sahib wished. Now, so that had been the historical approach of the lot of members within the Congress party. Now, that is something which was kind of being now severely challenged, and that position was not at all acceptable after 1929, when people like Pandit Nehru and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose fiercely protested against this. But students, though it is not mentioned, not yet, we haven't come across this, but I would like to mention one very important thing here. Now, please do not think that it was for the first time in 1929 that the Indians made a demand for the Purna Swaraj, or the complete independence, and that for the first time, they said that yes, we would not settle for anything less than the complete independence of India. Now, this did not happen in 1929 for the first time. All of you have heard of the great leader of freedom struggle in India, Lokmanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Now, he was a freedom fighter from Maharashtra, and in fact, he was considered to be, or rather, he is considered to be one of the first pan-India freedom fighters of Indian freedom struggle, whose popularity ran from east, west, north, south. All across, and everyone in India and every Indian had heard of Bal Gangadhar Tilak, though he died in 1920. Okay, so he was definitely not around in 1929. He was dead in 1920, and that is, if it makes it easy for you to remember, he died five years after Mahatma Gandhi came to India from South Africa. That is, so it was Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and all of you and all of us have heard of this very very famous quotation of his, that Swaraj mera janmsad adhikar hai, main aur usko lekar rahunga. Now, this is something he said it way back in 1906. Here it is being talked about in 1929 that people like Pandit Nehru and Netaji Subhas had enough of it. But then Tilak had said this way back in 1906. So it's like 23 years before this. Okay, and that's why people like Bhagat Singh and people like Bal Gangadhar Tilak, they are forever there etched in our memories, though they had a very hardline approach against the British compared to what the Congress party had, but then they remain forever some of them very very illustrious names of India's freedom struggle. Okay, so that is important to remember, that demands had been were being made by from certain quarters way back in 1906 as well. And if it is and what led Bal Gangadhar Tilak to make this very, very famous quotation was, students, I don't know if it's there in this chapter. In 1905, Bengal was partitioned by the British. You know, the one that you know today as Bangladesh, of course, and what we know as West Bengal, state, which is Indian Bengal. These were unified. They were part of one unified Bengal. Okay, but it was always that eastern part of Bengal, that is today's Bangladesh, had a majority Muslim population, and the western part of Bengal, that is today's West Bengal, had an Hindu population. Now, Lord Curzon, who then was the Viceroy of India, he partitioned Bengal, making it the Muslim Bengal and making it an Hindu Bengal. And now this was something deeply resented by the Hindus of West Bengal, and that was the time in that is after year, that is in 1900. That was the Bengal partition led because Indians were not consulted at all. The British did it on their own, and so that is what people like Tilak said. We should be the masters of our own destiny. We should have a total rule. We should have a absolute absolute power to make and take our own decisions, and that's why he said it. Okay, the Salt March and the civil disobedience movement. Students, this is a very, very important topic. You know it already. The questions would always come from the Salt March and the civil disobedience movement, and it is not just from the questions point of view, examination. That is, it is also very interesting to read and to understand why do we always talk about the greatness of Mahatma Gandhi? Okay, why he is considered to be the father of the nation or Rashtrapita. What made him so big, what made him so kind of popular and great. So Mahatma Gandhi found in salt a powerful symbol that could unite the nation. On 31st January 1930, he sent a letter to Viceroy Lord Irwin stating 11 demands. Some of these were of general interest, others were specific demands of different classes, from industrialists to peasants. The idea was to make demands wide ranging so that all classes within Indian society could identify with them and everyone could be brought together in a united campaign. And the most stirring of all was the demand to abolish the salt tax. So, what it essentially says is Mahatma Gandhi made 11 very forceful demands from the British, and one of the most important demands was the abolition of salt tax, which the British used to charge the Indians. But students, it is not mentioned here, but they also made one very, very, or rather, Mahatma Gandhi made one very important demand, which is not mentioned here, was that he demanded the British to reduce the rate of land revenue, because that was considered to be extremely high, very oppressive, and as you had seen in the previous video, that the crops had been failing in those years, and it was becoming extremely difficult for the farmers to really meet their ends. Hundreds of farmers had been dying. So this was a very major demand, the reduction rate of land revenue. This was also made. We shall continue. Thank you.